Well, this evening, welcome everybody. I'm Tricia Biles, president of the school board, and I'm so pleased to see more people joining us here at the meeting. I wanted to start out with some gratitude and recognition. We usually start our meetings out with a little bit of a nod to our CREATE values, and I wanted to express my gratitude for the values that this board brings to the table every day and the hard work that they have. I want to express my gratitude to our administration and all of you working so hard in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of leadership changes. We really value you coming together and the hard work you do. And even more so, I want to express my gratitude to all of you in the community, whether you're listening in or if you're here and present. I feel so proud of Lake George. Throughout these last few months, we've seen tumultuous times in other communities, and our community has been civil. Our community has been united and able to bring up concerns in ways that are kind and caring. And I'm pleased that we have a welcoming environment to have you here today. So thank you for coming. All right. We're going to start off today with our cafeteria report. Chef Jeff.
I would like to start off by saying thank you to the board, the administrators, the students and staff of Lake George for their continued support of our food service program. Last year found a lot of us making changes in the school due to the pandemic, and our cafeterias were no exception. Nothing was self-serve any longer. Everything from salads to sunflower seeds to condiments and utensils had to be individually packaged and passed out by cafe staff. We had students eating in their lunches in rooms all over both buildings, and the lines needed to be moved along efficiently in order to allow time for sanitizing in between classes. There were few reminders about distancing and masking up after meals, but all in all, I was extremely proud of the efforts of both the students and staff to make our mealtime safe. Safety was my biggest goal for last year, and I would like to commend them all for all that they did to make that a reality. Amongst the changes, we were able to keep some things the same. We were able to keep our themed days, our French Week celebration, our Thanksgiving meal, our spring luau, and our end of the year cookouts in both buildings were a huge hit and helped return a little bit of normalcy. I tried to be visible and continue to meet with student council about many changes, ideas, and the like. Last year, school meals were free for all students. It was supposed to be through December 20th, but they ended up extending it through June of 21. And for this entire year, meals are also free. I don't know if that's going to continue on that way after this school year. I know there's a lot of people pushing for that, but we'll have to see as that comes. This year, our challenges are a little bit different. I'm sure you've all seen if you go to the grocery store, higher prices, product shortages, and worker strikes have made it difficult to provide a lot of the items that we normally use during the school year. We've had no food bidders on our BOCES food bid this year. They put it out twice and nobody wanted a bid on it because of many of the vendors are experiencing labor and driver shortages and they could not give bid pricing during such an unstable market. USDA allowed us to do an emergency procurement policy for those that tried to use the proper bidding channels but didn't receive any response. So that is what we are doing. We're using a company called Ginsberg Foods out of Southern New York that has still been able to come up and dependably deliver to us during the times that we're open. So as soon as national chains like US Foods and Sysco come back online and say that they'll deliver to us again, then we'll go through our competitive process again. But right now it's just kind of get what you can get when you can get it. Beginning in January, there is a proposed styrofoam ban in New York. And while I think this is a great thing for the future of our state and our planet, the timing is problematic. Many of the compostable alternatives are either out of stock due to a lack of manufacturing resources or labor shortages. When they are in stock and able to be found, they are 6 to 7 times more expensive, which is something that we need to keep in mind going forward with our program. There's a hearing session at the end of the month for agencies and groups to voice their opinion to the DEC. I know that the New York State School Nutrition Association is going to advocate for a delay in the law, similar to what they did with the plastic bag ban like a year ago, and they just delayed it for a couple of months in order to give the supply chain some time to bounce back. My goals for our program this year, consistency. I haven't had to change any menu items this year due to unavailability, and I'm trying to plan ahead far enough that I hope to keep it that way. I'd like to get back working towards the New York 30 incentive, which gives you price back per meal if you can use 30% of your meals. The ingredients for your meals are New York sourced. I've been working with the Tri-County food directors, all of my peers. We've compiled the list of locally sourced things that I think will help us get to that New York 30 once the supply starts coming back. Tomorrow I'm meeting with Cornell Cooperative Extension to get back into the farm to school movement and meet with them about having them come back in and do taste tests and the fruit and vegetable of the month and things of that nature. So I'll start the ball rolling with them tomorrow. And my last goal is to increase participation. We saw a little bit of a dip last year where we had 42% district-wide for lunch, 16% for breakfast. I attribute that to, we started off the school year with the whole month of September, the kids were on alternating schedules. We had a number of quarantines throughout the year. We had a small shutdown in January. So there were things that I think that affected that, but it's kind of hard to tell based on that number because it was such a weird year. This year, we're already starting off much better. We're at 52%, up 10% from last year so far with our lunches, and we're at 12% for our breakfast participation. So that is my other goal for the year, is to try and speak with the students, find out what they would like to try, why they're not eating breakfast when they come in. And I know for the younger kids, it's hard. I'm a father of 3. I wouldn't let mine leave the house without eating breakfast in the morning, make sure they've done it. But just to let them know that it's available, it's free. And if there's something different that we can offer, that maybe it would increase some participation. That's about all I have. If anybody has questions for me.
I don't have a question, Jeff, but I just want to congratulate you for keeping our kids safe and well fed and still having the creativity to keep some normalcy with some of those celebratory meals that you talked about.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jeff, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have our elementary update with Ms. Conway.
But I do want to, on behalf of Fran and myself, thank you, Jeff, for all that you do and the entire staff in the cafeteria on what they do for our kids each and every day. A lot that goes into that, and they're tremendous. So thank you. So 2 weeks from now, Thanksgiving, right? So happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out here, which is exciting. My favorite holiday, or one of them for sure. I wanted to let you know that we had a visit from our coach from Franklin Covey. She comes in and takes a look at our program, our leadership program, and how things are going. I love that perspective from somebody from the outside. Oftentimes we can look at things in a certain way, but when somebody comes in that has never been in the school, they really take a look at what we're doing and offer us that look through a critical lens. I'm really proud of our students who met with her to share information about their school. I don't prep the kids. It's just, come on in, guys, and you're going to talk. And I sit there, and it's pretty powerful. Our kids love their school. They love their community, and they're really proud of the opportunities that are afforded to them. And she recognized that when she traveled around the building. But most powerful, I feel, is the student voice and what they shared with her. So I wanted to mention that to you. And we're taking some of the feedback that she offered us to continue to make some improvements. Our kids are amazing. This past month, we've had a number of celebrations at the elementary school. And I'll kind of focus on some of the patriotic holidays, I'll call them, and their importance to us. With Election Day, it's kind of tricky holding elections with students ranging from 5 up to 6th grade. So one of the things that we do is we have a vote of sorts to try to teach them about the election and a voting process. And Mrs. Crossman does some amazing things with our kids who a few years back started painting pumpkins. And we had 28 kids who did that. And then everybody in the school winds up voting. And it's just kind of a fun way to teach that process and how voting works in our school. And that will kind of lead me into the next holiday we celebrate is Election Day. And our kids put together under Mr. Schenk, I think we had about 30 students that put together a pretty impressive video talking about the holiday and the meaning and the importance of celebrating our vets and also recognizing those vets that work in our building, the 4 that do work. So some good things going on in that regard. Our second PTSO meeting of the year was held last night, so thank you. I think we had Marianne, Katie, and Dr. Huntley were able to be there last night. And again, I'll share that our student reps and PTSO, the S is in that organization, are just really impressive. We bring them in as leaders in the building and don't share with them what's going to happen, and they're able to on the fly produce great feedback. For us as the adults, we often think that we have all the answers, and my goodness, we don't. Our kids really they just rise to the top whenever they're given that opportunity to have a voice, and they did last night at that meeting. For those that attended, you definitely saw that. And finally, Student Lighthouse team is firming up their action plans for the year. I never know what they're going to wind up doing. We allow them to come up with plans and then say, make it happen. And they're just starting that process of coming up with plans for where they're headed. And the report cards in our building are going to be sent out on Monday. A little switch. We went from Friday to Monday, and that information went out to our families. So tried to condense some things, the time tonight, but are there any questions for me?
I have a question. I just want to make a comment. I never leave the TSO meeting. I always leave there feeling more hopeful about the world, and just to watch those young students freely expressing their with is really, it's a beautiful thing. I always feel great when I leave there. So thank you for helping instill that.
It's true leadership and action, and it shines through. So thank you for.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Mr. Kokoza, junior, senior high school report.
Hi, good evening. I just have a few quick updates. One, to wrap up the fall season, which just ended. Some highlights to review. Our varsity boys soccer team clinched the Adirondack League as championships and moved on to sectional quarterfinalists. Our varsity girls as well clinched the league championship and also went on to sectional quarterfinalists. Varsity golf, Zach Bruno was league champion and sectional qualifier. Varsity volleyball, our girls clinched the Adirondack League as champs and also moved on to sectional finalists. Varsity cross country, our girls team were league champs as well and 4th in sectionals. Our cross country boys were league champs as well and sectional finalists. And our football team had a strong showing this season in the fall, finishing with 3/3 overall. So congratulations to all our athletic teams for all of those accomplishments. Last night, we had our first ever concert at the Fort William Henry Carriage House. Our senior band and our senior chorus are too large to fit on our stage with COVID restrictions. So last night, we packed the Carriage House with a wonderful concert, and we appreciated Dr. Huntley being present for that concert. Our junior high concert will be back here in the auditorium because we can fit on the stage, but the senior high, we were able to do that. We want to thank the Fort William Henry Corporation for lending us the Carriage House last night. It was great. It worked out wonderful. Friday is the last day of the first quarter. I cannot believe that. Friday is the last day of the first quarter. And Mr. Conway and I are in the throes of teacher observations. So right now, he and I are in classrooms observing teachers, but what we are observing are fully engaged learners with significant focus on the task and objectives at hand. I can tell you that what we're experiencing here in terms of learning and focus is not being experienced in other districts, because many districts are still transitioning their students back to full instruction. So we hit the ground running in September, and it's just a reminder through our teacher observations, the great work that our teachers are doing and how wonderful our students are within the classrooms. So any questions for me? This microphone is like 3 inches too short for me.
Rosemary, did you have a question?
I just wanted to comment that I agree with that. Thank you, Fran. I attended the Honor Society inductions for Senior Honor Society and the French Honor Society, and it seemed like a lot of students were declining enrollment. So I thought that was a very positive thing. Brenda Hoffman gave a great speech on emotional health as well as academic health and how they work together, and it was a wonderful induction. And it was really nice to see the kids, like you said, they're still working hard and dedicated to their studies. So that was evident. And so thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Capoza. Next up, we have Dr. Huntley with the superintendent report.
So there's a great deal to report on, a lot to talk about, but I'm going to condense my comments to just a few. It's wonderful to see the Board of Education at events. The events that I'm going to, I see at least 1 or 2 board members at each of them. And it's important for you to see the students. I'm glad that you're doing that, activities and the events. I'd like to recognize and thank Chef Jeff also. I hope you're keeping track of the spinach wraps that are being sold, because I think I'm in first place on spinach wraps. I'm a regular. The faculty and staff will be getting a message tomorrow relative to Veterans Day. We will thank and recognize our veterans, and we've also recognized the veterans who we know who work for us in the district, so they'll get a little bit of special recognition tomorrow, and I know the 2 schools are doing special things too. So one of the things that I've observed, I've only been here for a short while, but I place a great deal, and have always placed a great deal of emphasis and priority on leadership. I think that's one of the best things that we can provide our students: leadership opportunities, leadership skills. And I've got to say that I am so impressed with what I'm seeing here at Lake George, starting at the elementary school. Of course, there's a great deal of emphasis that's placed on leadership with the Lighthouse program. I've had the great opportunity and thank Mr. Conway for inviting me to a couple of the sessions that the students have had. It's remarkable what these students are doing and the responsibility that they're provided. And I think that if you can provide students that kind of responsibility, they'll respond. And that's what I've been noticing and watching at the elementary school, but it doesn't stop there. Sarah, thankfully, has been doing a great job in terms of scheduling students after school for 15 or 20 minutes to meet with me. I've met with a lot of students in that way and had small conversations. Most of these students have been class officers, student council leaders, class representatives, FBLA students, VEX Robotics leaders, you name it, we're getting them in, and I'm so impressed with the responsibilities that they're taking on too, and the leadership opportunities that they're provided. I provided the Board of Education with our enrollment presentation. All the board members have seen the presentation, so I'm not going, typically I would do it at a board meeting, but you've already seen it, so it's not necessary to duplicate that. But I do want to just summarize just briefly on enrollment. We know enrollment's going down, that's no secret, and you've known that for quite some time. So the presentation, I think, needs to be kept in perspective. And if you recall, the presentation begins at a macro level and then goes to micro so New York State, and the enrollment decline I showed the enrollment decline in New York State and then disaggregated it by primary and secondary enrollment. And you could see the decline just by looking at that one graph over time. And so then we look at regional enrollment, which is the Adirondacks within the blue line. And I was able to show where Lake George compares in terms of other districts in declining enrollment. And then we looked at other comparisons like districts that are comparative districts, the districts that through the CASA study that you pick those districts out. So I know where Lake George falls in that category, and then within the BOCES and within the county. So to make a long story short, your declining enrollment is very average. It's right in the middle in all of those categories. Yes, we have declining enrollment, but no, it's not an aberration to this community alone. It's happening throughout New York State, the Northeast, and most parts of rural United States. So I want to thank Mr. Kokoza and Mr. Conway for the receptiveness that they've given me to get into their buildings. And of course, I'm in this building, but get into their classes, see their kids, and provide me with access to whatever I need, want, and help and direction. So thank you two guys for your help and support so far.
Thanks so much, Dr. Huntley. And thanks for your leadership and collaboration with the whole district and the board. Next up, I just want to give everybody an update on our superintendent search and give us an opportunity to ask any questions at this juncture. We as a board had our workshop and had a chance to talk about some of the points that are important to us in the superintendent search. One of the more important points was having opportunities to listen to our community, our school community, our broader community, to find out as much as we can to inform the profile of the type of superintendent that we are looking for. We are hoping to work backwards from a timeline where a new superintendent will be hired and ready to start up July 1. That's the goal. And we're starting with that. We already sent out a survey to our community, and we've set a date for a community forum, and that invitation should be going out, I think, by the middle of next week. And that community forum right now is set for December 7th, and we're hoping to get a larger venue, possibly a hotel, so that we can host a number of people in a spread out space with round tables, so that we have a chance to really engage with one another and get good information. A few details that we still need to work out has to do with the actual interview process. One of the things we did determine is that we think it's advantageous to have a confidential search so that we can recruit the most candidates. That was advice that we've received, and we had that conversation. And we want to figure out how to best manage the interview process. So those details are things that I'm going to ask for you to send me some feedback. I'll throw out a proposal, and Jim Dexter, who is working with us, will help fine tune that as well. And we probably will have another time where we all have to get together just to iron out some more of these dates. But I think the interview piece is the big piece. Once we get the survey set and the forums. With the forum, we also need to determine the questions and the format of that forum. So I'm thinking it might be a good idea if we want to throw those ideas out to the Board Development Committee, and the Board Development Committee can mock something up, or we could meet all together as a board. Mindful of our time, because we have a number of forums and workshops and things like that coming up yet. But we can put something together, have the Board Development Committee fine tune it, and then Jim Dexter can help us with it from there. Does that sound like a good process? Okay, let's do that then. So you'll get a communication from me. Any questions or comments about the search thus far? All right. Well, thank you. One other thing in this section is committees, and I know that we put a goal in place for us to be managing our committees where we have a very intentional charge. And I think we're doing a great job with that. And I wanted to give a shout out to all the committee chairs. We're having increased participation from our community in our committee meetings, which is excellent. That means that we have community members who are becoming more educated and informed on board processes. And if there's any questions about how we conduct public comment in a committee meeting, please reach out and talk to me if you have any questions about that. I think we've been doing that well. I know when we had the Culture and Climate Committee, one thing I neglected to do was to give the parameters of what the public comment was at the beginning of that. Our committee meetings are shorter, and so making sure that we're getting enough time for business and enough time for the public comment, so people feel included and welcome, and yet we're making sure the business gets taken care of. And next up, we have Melissa Seal with the Athletic Committee report.
Okay, so we met on October 12th. Well, we started out with updating our mission, vision, values, no changes there. We had an update on the athletics facilities needs assessment, where coaches were asked what their wishes were, what their needs were. And these are currently being addressed by Mr. Manning, the facilities department, Mr. Kokoza. And then updates on fall sports, COVID, section guidelines. We went over that as well. The continued discussions in regards to the future planning, considering declining enrollment. And one of the things that we were looking at is the general guidelines related to sports offerings, which is step one, consolidating levels, offering just modified and varsity at this point. Investigating a merger if we can't meet the numbers of that sport. And then the last would be that, is that sport going to continue to be offered? So, looking at each individual sport and what we're looking like in regards to numbers. The dual sports pilot, where kids can pick two sports, is at the varsity level, and that's been rolling forward. That has to be approved, and we have a couple of students doing that, and it's been successful so far. Admissions at Lake George athletic events, we discussed that as well, how it was a student-led initiative, allowing Lake George students to enter contests free of charge, because this was something that was brought up recently. Dr. Huntley, Mr. Kokoza, Mr. Manny met, and they determined the district will not charge students or adults for athletic contests. And we will continue the practice of occasionally taking admission donations towards special causes like Ben Osborne Memorial Fund, Cancer Center, etc. And then if other league schools are using our facilities, they may charge if we host certain events. So that might come into play. We had a football community meeting. We talked about it at our athletics meeting, and we had it on November 2nd, and it was successful. We had tables of community members. Dr. Huntley did a wonderful job leading the discussion in regards to making sure everyone understood the declining enrollment numbers, what we're looking at, and what our options are moving forward in regards to mergers. And we got a lot of feedback from the community as to what they feel the next step should be, or what mergers they would be interested in moving forward with. So we took all that information and we're working on a couple of things right now. And then other than that, our next meeting's March 8th, if anyone's interested in attending. We usually meet at the, in the alumni room in the back there and start a little bit before 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Do we have any questions? All right, on to Katie Bruning with our audit and finance report.
October 20th, and reviewed the treasurer's report and claim auditor's report, which is in the agenda tonight. We reviewed the corrective action plan for the 2021 audit report. In that audit, we found that the extra classroom activity fund indicated that 5 student activities were financially inactive during the year, and it's probably due to COVID. Am I? Okay. The high school principal and business administrator will review these student activities at the end of the first semester to determine if they've had any activity for the current year. If they're not active or not expected to be active, their funds will be distributed in accordance with board policy. The corrective action plan will be recommended for approval tonight. Dr. Huntley provided an update on negotiations indicating that the LGEA will be looking at possible meeting dates, and the committee reviewed the list of stipends that are currently paid by the district.
All right, thank you for that work. I'm next up with the Culture and Climate Committee report. It was requested at the last board meeting that the Culture and Climate Committee talk about the idea for designating the Native American head as a heritage image for this district. Some of the points that were brought up were really about the ideas and different perspectives around what a Native American image presents. And one of the things that we very strongly felt was that this is an image that is part of Lake George right now. It is a symbol of pride. It is a symbol that is part of our identity. And amidst all of the controversies that we hear in neighboring districts, the recommendations and guidance that we get from outside agencies, including the commissioner, we see that this is an important educational responsibility that we have. This is something very relevant to Lake George. And I think we discussed that folks have been hesitant to talk about it and to inquire, why do other people have different perspectives? Why doesn't everybody see this image and interpret this image in the same way? And when we're thinking about imagery that represents the district, we certainly want an image that unifies. That is something that brings us together as a community. This image has done that, and we recognize that, and we want to note that and know that with anything coming in the future, changing times, interpreting the guidance that comes to us, we want to make sure that we hold fast to that and honor that piece. So that's where the idea of designation as a heritage image comes into play. So we had that conversation, and the committee brings forward the recommendation that we do vote on a resolution to determine that as a heritage image, and then charge the district with taking the educational lead to understand the nuances of that as an image. And what are the different perspectives around that? And then what is actually done with it? Because we know right now that this district uses many different images to put forth and represent Lake George. So we're just asking for more definition around that and more conversation. It does not cancel anything. And we think that that's very important because that opens the door for folks not to be defensive, to really open up their minds and be curious and hopefully come to the table to try to understand other people. Any questions? All right, so that was one piece. The next was what direction the Culture and Climate Committee is going. We formed the Culture and Climate Committee last year with the charge of creating a school climate where everyone is important, welcome, safe, and valued. And as appropriate to a board committee, we get presentations from the district. And we have not set the dates yet, but we did state that we would have 2 more meetings this year. And the first one will be focusing on student-centered programs and approaches that contribute to a positive culture and climate. So it's really celebrating what we're doing already to make Lake George a welcoming, wonderful place. So we'll have that presentation come to the Culture and Climate Committee later this year. And then the third meeting of the year will really be determining what next, what other part of culture and climate we want to have a presentation on. Any questions?
Who makes that designation as an American heritage image? I mean, can we just do that ourselves, or is there an organization that does that? I'm just curious.
That would just be our language.
Okay, I didn't know where that was coming from. Thank you.
And I was just going to say, Tricia, I had been thinking a lot about that resolution myself, and I don't think I'd be able to say this as well as you have, but, you know, I just reflecting on the fact that, you know, image connects to identity, you know, and that I think that discussions around matters relating to identity can be difficult. And so I like this resolution because I think designating an image as a heritage image, it protects and respects that identity, where our identity today, where we've been, where we are, and it does create some space for educational opportunity and developing, like we're always seeking common language and understanding, and it creates a safe space. I just like the idea of it, so just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Anything else? All right, next up, we have the Policy Committee report. Mary Ann McKenzie.
This evening, we have 6 policies moving to second read and 4 moving forward to first read. Of those 4, one of them came to us by Erie One update, that's 8220 career and technical occupational education. And the other 3 were reviewed per our routine policy manual review. The policy committee met last evening, and the minutes, I'm sorry, there's here. The minutes for yesterday's meeting will be present in next month's regular board agenda, but I can provide highlights from that meeting tonight. We spent a good bit of time providing an update and having discussion on our DEI, which is Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Ad Hoc Committee progress. As an update, on October 27th, we had there was a virtual conversation between myself, Board President Tricia Biles, Superintendent Dr. Huntley, and 3 representatives from CASDA and Common Thread, and CASDA is the Capital Area School Development Association. And we had an opportunity in that conversation to articulate the goals of our ad hoc committee experience, which is to be able to review sample policies on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and receive community input and feedback in our efforts to develop a policy that's meaningful for Lake George. The folks from Common Thread appear to understand, I'm sorry, I back up for a second. We were also specifically in our pursuits asking for some support with a first step session with our ad hoc committee and looking for some expertise to help us have some introductory conversations and develop common language and understanding and terminology. And those individuals felt that they seemed to understand what we were asking for and believed that they can offer us that support, and did not feel that, we let them know that a large group of people, upwards of 40 people, that did not present as a barrier for them, which was good. And let's see here. Although the policy committee, we did discuss, who will be in that group, and really the only credential that we are asking for in order to participate in this committee is that each participant be a Lake George stakeholder. So the next step, per their suggestion, is that we have a meeting with a smaller focus group, upward of about 12 people, policy committee, administrators, perhaps a few teachers, and that invitation would extend to the rest of the board as well. And we're just going to get together to learn a little more about their process, Common Thread's process, and just in an effort to help us be more prepared for our first ad hoc session in December, hoping that it's in December, and Dr. Huntley is working to help us set a date for that. Let's see here. Once we have a date, we'll send out an invitation. We'll share the charge for the committee. We hope to also share the charge at our board meeting next month. And I think lastly on this topic, we also will be looking to explore some external venues for this, because we want our to provide a comfortable setting for group work. So that's it for the DEI ad hoc update. The other issue that we discussed last night, that there were lots of small sort of minor editing issues with policies, but the other significant conversation we had was around policy 1512 and 1510. One of them is public participation at board meetings, and we had been doing, coincidentally, just a routine review of that policy when we received an update from Erie One on 1510, which is regular board meeting and rules, quorum, and parliamentary procedure. There's overlap between those two policies. We're looking to actually, the policy committee discussed last night, consolidating those two. And in addition to that, the public comment policy, there were suggestions for some very substantial edits and revisions, with a strong emphasis on making sure that the language is very welcoming of public expression, and also ensuring that there's some flexibility to adjust parameters in order to meet district need. So you can look for that coming hopefully to first read at next month, and I ask you guys all to take a close look at that and make sure that the wording is right for Lake George and following best practices. I think that's it for me. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Marianne. So next up, we have our first public comment session. In this public comment session, we invite people to have comments about the agenda thus far. There's a second public comment session to bring forward any new ideas or something that's not on the agenda. We do ask that folks stick to 3 minutes. Lynn, will you be our timekeeper? Thank you. And also remember that we don't discuss personnel information, and we move forward with kindness and civility. We have 2 people on our list here, and we have another. Okay. And Amanda Doers is up first.
Good evening, Amanda Doers. I have several children in the school district. This is from an outside community member that's also concerned. She wanted to know how you obtained the company that you are using to assist in developing the DEI language, And why didn't you contract out for another bid? That was one question she had. That was a question I had too. This is all new for me, so I am learning as I go. I am trying to stay active in the community. So that was one. I don't know if you wish to address that, and I can get my second in.
Thank you. For any more extensive questions, we can certainly get back to you on that. I know we were already contracted with this group for some work, so that was already pre-established, and we were just turning to them as an existing district resource. We can find out more about the contracting unless there's just a quick answer. Do you have a quick answer? Okay, good.
So school districts from mostly the eastern side of the state, many school districts contract with CASDA. It's a professional development organization that's been in existence for a long time. It's an arm of the University at Albany. So this organization called CASDA, their primary responsibility is to provide professional development for school districts, teachers, administrators, even transportation directors, directors of facilities. That's what they do. So they vet people and organizations who do these presentations. So the school district will contract through CASDA to work with organizations that might meet the need of each individual request coming from school districts. So it's a very typical, very standard way in which school districts provide professional development for their communities, for their teachers, for whatever reason might be necessary. And it's not necessary for this professional development to get competitive bids. I heard you mention that.
Like different bids to different.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can understand why one would think that, but it's not an issue to contract through CASDA for organizations.
Okay. And then
I'm just going to add one other thing. I'm sorry, just to let you know that this organization, the policy committee is using them as a resource, but they're not guiding the policy. They're really for this one facilitation piece. But it is a community process at this point to inform the policy.
Well, I just needed a little bit, I'm writing it down, learning it as we go. A lot of people that they can't be here tonight, so they voice their questions. I don't know if they're coming through there, but and I needed a little bit of clarity. So bear with me on the warrior head. I'm a little confused with the heritage symbol. Are we kind of retiring the warrior head? I just needed to be a little bit clear. Sometimes I get a little lost in all the fancy language. So
It's understandable. There's no action being taken on it. There's opportunity for more community conversation to understand about it, about some of the guidance that's coming through, some of the research that's already been done that the district possesses.
Okay.
And it really opens up that opportunity and to define it, because right now we don't have any definition on the images that we use, how we use them, where we use them, and those things aren't defined.
Well, and I just was wondering why this is coming up now. Like why now? Like why not 10 years ago? Why not 5 years ago? Like why now? Is it the culture around us that's influencing it? Is it outside communities that are influencing it? I'm trying to get a grasp on it. That's all for myself.
Yeah, it's a great question. Did you want to answer? Go ahead, Dr. Huntley.
Know that I can answer it, but I can comment on it relative to you asked why not 10 years ago. 20 years ago, a little more than 20 years ago, Commissioner Rick Mills put out memorandums to every district in New York State. And essentially, he asked the districts to address the issue of Native American imagery
Not
So-
to interrupt, I was here 20 years ago. We had our principal at the time, Mrs. Jager. She wanted to rename us the Bluebirds, and the community was up in roar about that. I remember I was here. I was here for that 20 years ago.
So I think that's one, so it's not the only point I want to make is it's not new. The commissioner
Mhm.
came out in around 2000. I was a superintendent at the time and addressing the issue that time. So it's not new. And most recently, there has been the commissioner, our sitting commissioner has come out with messaging relative to images also.
No, I understand that. I just, as a community, it's small, it's tight knit. You can go into Stewart's and you know someone in Mini Chopper, and it's just a community. I mean, I've seen people at the football games. I don't even have a kid that plays football on the team. I have my nephew, but you meet people that are in love with our community, that don't even have a relative here, that come and support it. So I feel like if we have that as a community with our school, I don't see how the logo is preventing them to come and support a team in a school they've never been a part of. So that was just my concern. That's all, and
Thank you. And thank you for coming up. And I think that this is going to give an opportunity for answers. Well, a lot of people don't understand all the nuances and why it is at the surface, and this opens that up. We're not going to be able to unpack all of that today, but hopefully we'll be able to have
well, I just want to make sure the community is involved. I don't want an ugly mess of what happened with Luzerne and Lake George merger. I don't want that again. That was not fun for anybody, not you nor us. So I just wanted to make sure that, we're in it and asking questions. Thanks, guys, for
Absolutely.
your time. I know I went over.
Thank you, Amanda. Next up, James McCabe.
Hello. I got a question one about school rings, right? Do you offer the Warrior Head for the school rings?
I don't have
I was
information
told-
on the merchandising.
Well, I was told from someone from the school had mentioned take the Warrior Head off of the order sheet. I was just wondering if it's on every other year, it was the Warrior Heads, you're able to get it on the ring. I want to know from you guys.
I
whether
can
it's
tell you the
changed.
board has not given any direction at all for any merchandising.
So they
haven't
can get
given
it
any-
then, you're saying?
I'm
Is that
sorry.
so they can get
I'm
it?
saying I don't have any information
So
about
who-
merchandising, and we have not given guidance for merchandising. That's not our, that's
Okay,
not in
so
our
then is
purview.
that- Fran?
Yeah,
would
that,
that be-
and I'll ask you if we could have that conversation outside the board meeting.
Sure,
Thanks.
sure.
We can
What
get-
else do we got here?
Yeah.
As far as the Culture Climate Committee, who's on that?
I'm on that. Rosemary is on it. And I'm on that. 3 board members.
And that's all that's on the committee?
All of our committees have 3 board members assigned.
No,
to
I
it.
guess I'm sorry. What I'm asking is who's on the committee? Like, is it made up of the public? Who's on the committee?
It's a board level committee. It's not a district level or building level committee. It's similar to the curriculum committee and the athletics committee and the finance committee. It's board level.
Okay, so you talk about culture. I was just wondering, do you survey the students and the parents on the culture at the school?
So at the board level, we get reports from the administrative team.
Yeah, no, I'm asking, does the community get surveyed? Does the kids take a survey for the culture in the school?
That is an option that the schools have. That's not an initiative that the Culture and Climate Committee has undertaken.
Then how do you find out the culture?
We get reports from our administrative team, and that's how all the board,
So
that's
if
all
I'm
the board committees work.
from the faculty or students and I want the culture to be good,
Mhm.
I report back, we're all good, right? Am I right? Where's the feedback? The students or the people, and they're the they're
And that's a question the Culture and Climate Committee can ask the administration. So we can say, where are you getting your feedback? When they
Okay.
are reporting out to us? Once again, it's a new committee and there are different approaches that the administrative team can make to
I know.
report to the board.
You guys are all about transparency,
We are.
okay? So 3 minutes is up already? How about that?
Yeah.
Catch you on the next.
Okay, and we have one more.
Well, Mike Gates. I have two students here at the school. I just had a couple quick questions. In regards to the policy committee, Chairman just stated that during her conversation with senior staff at the school level, they reviewed the people for the ad hoc, and it was quote unquote, no one presented to be as a barrier. Could you elaborate on that? I mean, that's a direct quote. I just heard you say it.
I'm not sure what words came out of my mouth, but what I was saying, when we spoke with the folks at Common Thread and CASDA, we let them know the large number of people that had volunteered, and they did not see, they thought that that was absolutely fine, is what they said. They didn't see, there was some concern at the last board meeting. People asked, is that too many people to work on an ad hoc? And our dream was that everyone who was interested should be able to participate. And the people that we were seeking support from, they agreed that they could work with a large number like that.
Okay,
So I
it's
apologize
the
if-
size of the group and not the people who submitted to be on it.
No.
Okay.
Yes, the size of the group is not a barrier.
The second question I had was regards to the search for the new superintendent. You said that this is going to be confidential in regards to, but when does it become not confidential?
That's a really good question. And so the initial part of the search we know for sure is going to be confidential, giving candidates the opportunity to put their name in the hat without burning any bridges. It opens up the field.
Correct.
And it's something that is very much recommended at this stage with the pool that we're looking at. Where does it, in the final stages, we are still ironing out how that looks and what is best practice for the finalist. And if we do invite some community members and then they'd have to take an oath of confidentiality, we're working out those final details right now. And so if you have gotten the survey or if you haven't looked for it in your inbox, we're taking feedback for everything having to do with hiring the new superintendent.
Okay, but
Yeah.
at some point, first round, second round, they either got to step out into the light or go back in the shadows for good, correct? There's not going to be an appointment where no one in the community can have eyes on this individual and who they are and what their beliefs are and
No,
where they stand.
That's something that's understood. It's just the initial stages. That way we can really expand our pool of candidates.
Totally understand.
Yeah.
It could be. I mean, it is a board prerogative that they could just appoint somebody, but we as a board take the input of the community very seriously, and we're working through systems and structures to get that appropriately so that we get the best candidate possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just keep in mind, it's not, you were elected as board members, but the community is who the children are. I mean, that input is so, so important. Okay, have a great evening.
Thank you so much.
Realize at the time that the policies they weren't listed out on the agenda. So everything that I have to say, I filled out the second form for the
Oh,
second
okay,
public
but
comment.
you're in the first form. Okay.
So now I'm in the first one. Dr. Huntley, hi, I'm Lisa Doster. Wanted to say thank you so much for your presence. I've seen you out in the parking lot of the school several times, and I really appreciate you being there. Thank you, board, for the opportunity to speak this evening. In a crucial time during a pandemic, when we should be focused on well-being and mental health of our children, why is it the Board of Education is so focused on setting a recommended, not required, policy on diversity, equity, and inclusion? Is this really a problem in our school district? Does Lake George have a policy set for hiring outside consultants? If so, what is the policy and what are the standards? If Lake George does not currently have a policy for hiring outside consultants, I advise we create one. First and foremost, keeping our children safe, healthy, learning, and in a positive environment during this pandemic is what is our utmost focus. Remember, our focus is to teach all children to think for themselves, not to indoctrinate them on how to think. We need to lift each individual up to their truest potential. If we teach to only think or be a certain way, that is the pure basis of control, like the Nazi regime, or like brainwashing cults like NXIVM. Second, finding and keeping a superintendent is also our utmost focus. As adults, we lead by positive examples, as this is how many of us learn. That means working through issues together to find solutions. Lawsuits and trying to push people out creates a hostile environment which has underlying effects upon all that pass in the hallways of our schools. How are we going to achieve retaining and keeping a new superintendent if we can not all play in the sandbox appropriately as adults? How much time, money, and stress did the lawsuit against our previous superintendent cost us? Is it settled or is it still being appealed? How much is that going to cost? I'm sincerely concerned, and it seems very conflicting, that some of our staff and board are or were indirectly or directly involved with a situation that ultimately resulted in the need for a new superintendent. It doesn't feel like our children's needs are being put first. You're given the honor to take care of the well-being of our children. At this time, it certainly doesn't seem to be the case. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. That's okay. Come on up.
Is it on? Thank you. Name is Rod Cornelius. We have two children, one that has graduated here. And I need to express a concern when I hear about DEI and also the Indian Warrior Head. I don't know who's objected to that, if you've received any communication. No, it's not from the Mohegans. I saw the movie, I read the book. There's none left, okay? This is an area where we know historically the French-Indian War was fought. It's a much different area than the rest of the world. I guess if you watch, CNN or MSNBC, or if you read the New York Times, someone may object. But I think as a community, it's important. Our children, and I don't know how many years this Warrior Head's been around, but I guess it's a very long time, I would assume. And it doesn't make sense that we would buckle to anyone who would request that, because it is harming no one. Unless these 7 nations show up and start objecting, I don't think we should do anything about it. And it seems to add into this DEI as well. All that I've read about it, and since there's no policy yet, I don't even know why we're going down this road. This community has been welcoming to everyone of all colors, of all creeds, of all religions. And I don't see, I'm not aware of any problems in the school, having been around here for quite a while. And it just concerns me that you might be thinking of implementing something. I don't know if it's because of federal funding. I don't know what's the impetus for this conversation at all. But from what I hear, it would be tragic to teach children that they're oppressed or they're an oppressor, or because of the color of their skin, they're privileged or they're not. And I don't know where it's going. I did request to sit on the ad hoc committee, and I'm not complaining to anyone. I'm expressing my concerns. And I don't even know why we're going down this road and why we're wasting time on it, because there's been no problem in this school for many years. These fellows here have done a wonderful job, in part taking my one son through this school and our daughter. And it's a good school, and we don't seem to have any problems. But to combine this with the Warrior Head and the DEI, it does give me grave concern that somebody is influencing this group. And there's no diversity here for sure, but there is in our school. I mean, well, I'm just saying straightforward. And I appreciate that if I have a chance to speak on the ad hoc committee or the input, and I don't think you've done anything yet, but just the notion that these two topics are coming up are very concerning. And even though my daughter's a junior now, I've been in this community for many years, and probably my grandkids will go here someday. So I'm very concerned about this school. Thank you for your time.
Rod, thank you so much. And thank you so much for volunteering to be on the ad hoc committee. We're happy to have you on there.
All right, thank you.
We have two more. Come on up.
I think I signed the wrong list as well.
Okay.
My name is Linda Clark. I live here in the district. Both of my children graduated from Lake George. They had a wonderful education. It is a wonderful school. However, with that said, it takes a village to raise a child. And I have many neighbors that I know, and I have good relations with all of the kids in the neighborhood, and I am concerned about the implementation of the critical race theory at Lake George. And it sounds as though that might be coming through the DEI committee. I would like to request to be on that ad hoc committee as well.
Thank you. There is no initiative at all for critical race theory, and Sarah Barton can, if you send an email to Sarah Barton, she can put you on that committee.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we have one more. Yep.
Resident, got a couple of kids. I coach for the district. I had a question pertaining to the Indian Head. And I know you've been, I think, attempting to clarify what a heritage symbol would mean. But it sounds almost like it's going to be phased out. And I would only warn this. The area is rich with history. I would say that we're so fortunate to live here. Several years ago, there was a reenactment, some of you remember, right at Battlefield Park. And they had Native Americans there, and it was great. I'm a very social person. I had a chance, and I'm a historian, had a chance to talk with the Native American reenactors. They were awesome, authentic. And I was talking with this gentleman, and he said to me, he goes, you know, what the worst part about it is they don't even speak my language anymore. And it actually choked me up because I was like, oh, how terrible is that? The thought that someone can't communicate with their elders because their language is actually extinct. Okay. Now, I can understand why the Cleveland Indians with the Yahoo symbol, I might want to get rid of them because it's cartoonish and they're not Indians. They were mistakenly called that by Christopher Columbus, who he thinks he landed in India. Could see where that's derogatory. Certainly the Washington football team, their former name, I could see why someone would want to change that. But our symbol is not only relatively authentic, I would say, even if you know anything about James Fenimore Cooper, who wrote about this region and was really a contemporary of that time period, at least his grandparents were. And so he grew up here. The image of the Indian Head is quite authentic, and it's the name warrior, which I was a Marine. Those of us that served understand war, okay, and that it's a noble and necessary thing, okay. And those of us who take that risk to step up and say, hey, I am a warrior, no matter what generation, creed, heritage, whatever location. I would wonder if you spoke to a Native American and said, do you find this offensive? I can almost guarantee, based on my research, that they would say, no, I don't find that offensive at all. And I'm glad to hear that my heritage is being carried on in such a noble way because their language is gone, their culture is gone, pretty much. At least the images and the idea of someone who fights bravely for something they believe in should be carried forth. But I, you know, with your explanation of what's going to happen with heritage, it makes me think that it's going away. So I just wanted to say that, and you know, maybe just keep that in mind. Perhaps we've had a strong outpour of cries against the image from the Native American population. Okay, but
Thank you. I just wanted to say that this does give the opportunity to understand heritage, history, and And thank you for bringing your thoughts and opinions forward. We do have more information. We're not going to get into that tonight, but I'm looking forward to the conversations. One more, right back there. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not on your list. My name is Kimberly Stanko, and I have 2 children in the district, actually 3 children in the district, 2 in this building. And when this conversation first came up, I started to get very interested in it because I actually teach English, very interested in language and everything. And one of the first things I want to say is that I think it's incredibly crucial that as we discuss, or there any continued conversation over the warrior head emblem and the heritage symbol and calling it the heritage image, that we make sure that we keep these 2 conversations very different from one another whenever there's a conversation, including the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation and policy and all of that, that we keep it very separated from this because they're 2 totally different arguments. And I think that as the time that these are coming up in very close succession, that it's very easy to kind of almost lump these 2 things together. And I think that that's a very dangerous thing to do for any conversations that take place concerning it. The other thing I would like to ask is, I keep hearing the question asked and phrased, where is this coming from? And first we get like 2001, let's go back to Richard Mills. Let's go back to Cambridge in October of this previous year when the state actually said, you're done with the logo in Cambridge. And I think that is a question that I do have as an individual. Where is the conversation actually coming from? Is it coming from these moments where we have this kind of outside dialogue and we're starting this conversation now? And the timing of it as well, with having an interim superintendent and all these other things going on, to have such a conversation at that pivotal time seems almost a little bit distressing because it does need kind of those stakeholders that are here for the long haul to see the effects of that decision being made. And last but not least, I'd like to know what research has actually been done in pertaining to the warrior head emblem as well, because I reached out to the local historical society and was shocked to find out that no one has ever reached out to them, that no one has ever sought guidance from the Warren County Historical Society in reference to that. And in doing so, I was surprised and also relieved by their response to me, obviously stating that this needs to be a community decision that's being made, but in their professional opinions as a board, that there's nothing that they deem either derogatory or offensive, or should there be any concern, that it really does become a community conversation. So making sure that we have that community conversation is something that's very important. And I do agree. I think a lot of kind of this conversation came up, and now this, well, let's designate it as a heritage emblem or heritage image almost starts to disguise the conversation and cloak it in jargon and language that's not as approachable to even having that conversation. So that does become a concern as that conversation continues, that we make sure that we really are exploring the issue as a community and not hiding behind the language of it, because that's the exact thing we can't do, because that's what we're really looking at. We're looking at the language of that image and everything that it provokes.
Thank you very much.
Can I
Good
just add
timing.
One thing, Tricia,
Yes.
that decision by the commissioner was overturned. They asked for a stay. She granted it, and then it was overturned. And then Cambridge went nuts. So we don't want to be nuts.
Appreciate all of the call for education and dialogue. So thank you. Moving on to school business, we have this is our absolute last one. Please do, please do.
I hate to follow those last 2 eloquent individuals. What is the heritage image and what does it mean? I don't get it.
Thank you.
That's it. Can you
Thank
explain that
you.
for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to school business. Yep. All right, go ahead. We can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the school business consent agenda items A through J.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next on the vote, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby designates the Native American head as a heritage image for the Lake George School District, charges the district with determining its use. The asterisk is this resolution does not cancel anything or require any immediate changes, opens the discussion, allows for community inquiry, education, and the district will determine the appropriate timeline and approach for their charge. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next up, we have our faculty staff resignation consent agenda.
Recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the faculty staff resignation consent agenda items A through E.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the faculty staff appointment consent agenda items A through H.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. And we're on to Board of Education comments. We moved right through that. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I would just like to thank those resigning for their service and welcome those appointments aboard to their appointments. The other thing, we are here in Board of Education comments. I'm just looking out into our well-populated board meeting and wondering, do we have any veterans in the room? Will you stand to be recognized, please? Thank you for your service. Any other comments from the Board of Education?
Could I make a comment that I don't know if it'll help clarify, but I do hope people are really listening in terms of the Indian head and where we're at. I mean, the board really is handing that discussion to the district. I mean, I want to make sure that that's clear. That was the intent of what we did. And I really hope people heard that and understood that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, so we're up to our second public comment period, and I see some hands being raised. So, Mike, you can go ahead. Okay.
Me like I'm in the elementary school. What did we just vote on for the heritage symbol? I'm sorry. Just I'm not stupid, I promise you. But I need to understand,
Okay,
and I
we've
think
charged
you
the-
have a lot of
Yep.
people that are confused, so
Yep,
it might
we've
help you as
charged, we've charged the district with opening up that conversation.
well. Okay.
So we believe that there is an educational responsibility here. We believe there's a lack of clarity. Questions have come, guidance has come, and this is an opportunity for the community without any mandates to recognize our spirit, our heritage, and our identity and have those conversations.
Okay,
Yes.
so let me just summarize. So you've basically just formed a committee, voted on it, and opened it up to the public discussion about the heritage of the warrior head when it wasn't even an issue. That's where I'm having, that's where I'm having a communication.
So
delay.
here's the thing, that there are many layers to this. And
Okay.
the district has information that from the comments here, I understand the community does not have that information. And so So there is an opportunity. There has been a barrier to some of that education, which has been controversy and fear of conflict. We're hoping with our action that we're opening up the door for understanding.
I'm all about that.
And for civil discourse and to open our minds to other people's perspectives. because
I'm
there are
actually
many-
not from Lake George. I wasn't born and raised
That's
here.
okay.
I've come from Florida. I've been in other areas where I was a minority of the opposite culture. I never had any problems with race. No one, nor did my fellow Black students, because race wasn't placed on them. I feel like once you start placing race on people, then it becomes a problem. And that's my only issue with it. I've raised my kids the way I was raised. I didn't see race, I didn't see color, I saw a person. And I just don't want that being forced into their head because the rest of the world around our tiny Lake George town is hopping on the woke train. And that's how I have to put my concern, whether it sounds ignorant or not. That's how I do feel. So I don't know why we formed a committee about this to open it up to the community.
We didn't form a committee. This is just part
You
of
voted
the
on
board
opening
business.
up discussion
Yep.
about concern for a heritage warrior head. I think that's just, I'm trying to wrap my brain around it.
Yeah, it has been a Redskins. All these teams are.
That's good. Yep.
We're swimming in. So what we wanted to do.
I just don't want our school to become political like the rest of the world. I don't think I'm alone. I'm speaking for just myself, but I know that I'm entrenched in this community. You were my guidance counselor. I mean, I'm in this.
Thank
I know
you,
my
Amanda.
time's up, but I just want you to know that it's not just people are coming to me. I've got people texting me, and I usually don't get on my phone while in these community settings that are concerned, and that's all it needs to.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry to go over the time.
Yes, sir.
Community.
I'm Frank Rollo, and I've had kids go through school here, none at the present, but I'm still interested in what goes on here. I just have, for me, I just need clarification. Please define heritage image. And if you designate something as being a heritage image, what qualities does that confer upon that object or whatever it is?
Thank you. In a brief nutshell, is honoring the fact that it's part of our identity, it's part of our pride.
And if you make it a heritage image, does that give it any special powers, if you will? Like you can't get rid of it because it's a heritage image?
It's one of the things that we were talking about to make sure that we are not promoting cancel culture, so that we are helping people understand that this is an understood piece of pride and identity for our community.
I've got to say that I had the opposite reaction when I first heard about heritage image. I thought it was creating a situation where others can't come in and cancel that image because it's part of us. That it conferred it some a protection from attack. Is that true? Because what I've been hearing is everybody thinks it's something the opposite.
I think that what's happening is that the district and the community are going to be having conversations around it. So that's what we're opening the door for, to define it and its use, because right now it is not. Thanks. We're not gonna, just because of time, we're not gonna have a lot of more back and forths, but if there are some concise comments that people want to make, come on up, Mike.
One more quick thing. You know my pet peeve. I'm all about transparency and know what's going on. Just now, you guys voted on a whole bunch of agenda items that weren't listed on the agenda. items A through F. And none of that's listed here, so nobody in this room knows exactly what you just did.
So,
Go ahead.
I don't want to print them off the website or anything else. They should be attached in this document.
So what you were provided was a simple agenda, which just lists the titles of them because the electronic version is on the website. That's why.
There's more information also besides the consent agenda on the full agenda. It has all the reports from the committees and so forth. So there's a much more detailed content.
Okay, well, I'll
Yep.
print them out,
Thank
pass
you.
them out to everybody next month. So they
Yep.
have it.
Yep. Thank you. One more? Was that a hand? Okay.
James McCabe. I'd just like to have, can we have a full agenda report before the meeting? I mean, I don't have time to go look at, and I made the meeting, I came straight from work, okay? I'm here, we go through this meeting and then you have public comment. Now, I look at that thing, I go down here, I say, oh, well, I got an issue with this, okay? I don't have that option right now, A through J or whatever. You know, what happened to reading each line at a meeting? I mean, I was on the board. I used to read each line. What happened to that?
Thank you.
You know,
I
listen,
mean, if you have a request, I've heard your request that you would like to hear all of the agenda
well, I'd like
items.
to know
Thank
why
you.
we're not reading each line.
James, we're not going to get into a back and forth right now. We're
I'm
doing
asking you a
consent.
question, I'm not going back and forth. I just like to
Okay.
know what the answer is.
We have a consent agenda. That's the way that we have our agenda. We're going to move on to the next person. Thank you, James. Okay. Thank you. That's definitely part of the charge to the district. So that means that it's not something that the board is, our superintendent is in charge of the district. He's going to be working with the school as he does. Yes, thank you. Any last public comments? All right, thank you all. We really do appreciate the different opinions that you bring here, and thank you for engaging. All right, next up, I believe we have adjournment. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.